welcome back to the book club, where this is the second episode we're recording today, so I'm going to be much better at the intro.
Go ahead. Yeah,
right,
yay.
good. Welcome to the book club. I'm sure you've been here before.
Yeah, I'm Arbiter Ian.
And I'm Mira Manga. and you can find all the stuff that you need to find out about us in the thing below. But basically, we talk about books, specifically sci-fi books, even more specifically than that, Warhammer books. and we've been reading through the Horus Heresy series.
Yes.
We just recorded our episode on Battle for the Abyss, which is the 8th book. And we're sort of doing them in order, but you got convinced to read this book we're going to do today. Out of sequence, but it's sort of okay because it doesn't really happen in sequence.
I think a lot of people picked up on that. I really love reading about the Emperor and Primarch origins. So someone was like, this is a really short book. We read it for the Mirror Manga Book Club.
Yep.
And it was so exciting. And I really feel I'm now in an era of, I'm really enjoying jumping into these books.
Good.
I feel it feels natural.
Good. Well, we should say the book we are going to do today is
Valdor,
Birth of the Imperium. Valdor : Birth of the Imperium.
How exciting is that title?
Yeah.
People must have lost their minds.
It's really interesting. There's so much different about this. Particularly, one of the things I loved about this is every Horus Heresy book, every 40k book has this blurb at the start of it, which is like, it is the 30th millennium, the heresy has been, the Great Crusade. This one has a different one to anything else. Because it's set before it. But anyway, before we get to that, because that is in the book.
Maybe we can read that out.
We should do your action movie plot summary of Valdor: Birth of the Imperium.
This may not be accurate.
Okay, fine.
In a world long, long ago, before even 30k, that might be inaccurate, a battered terror is struggling to survive, plagued by warlords and a true cost of living crisis. A beacon of hope to draw humanity out of the old night has appeared in the guise of the Emperor. But Daddy is away, and while he is, the High Lords are getting up to no good. Interested in how the Primarchs came into being? Me too! And we find out stuff. Yay!
Yeah, we do. We're doing this in a weird way. So yeah.
Are we in 30k yet?
Yeah, we are. But we're before any of the current timeline. We're like at the very end of the 29th millennium. So we're like just before actual 30k.
Why 30k is coming up? They're checking for the why 30k bug.
And this is an interesting book. It's basically sort of part of a thing they call the Primarch series, where they do there's a series of books which are they're like novella length, and they're about each Primarch, and they usually aren't set in the heresy. They're usually set before it, and it gives you a bit of the character of what they were like.
We need to read
which we can go through at some point.
Yay.
But and
have you done a video on that yet?
No.
Okay.
And this is sort of like that, but it's not about a Primarch. It's about Valdor, who is kind of like a Primarch for the Custodes. Have we met the Custodes before?
I need you to explain Custodes.
Okay, right.
I need you to explain all
this book
the things.
does go into it a bit, but the big thing you need to know, because Valdor also is the, if you remember, is the thing we're currently waiting for in the Backwind series. That's the punchline at the end of Penitent, is they go, who's here in the City of Dust?
Yeah.
Valdor.
We've come full circle.
That's the word they're trying to figure out is Valdor. God. It's all Valdor. So Valdor's massively important.
Wow.
And when we read Pariah and Penitent, you didn't know what Valdor meant.
No.
Right. So.
Although we did have a book club recently. No, we did a puzzle online recently, Primarch puzzle.
Oh yeah.
And I remembered a reference to Sanguinius in one of the Beckwin books. So I am going back and I didn't know who Sanguinius was then.
There's a guy on I can't remember which podcast it is. There's a Blood Angels player who does a podcast, and it's a brilliant podcast. I think it's like Age of Darkness. But the guy who plays Blood Angels only pronounces it Singunius, which is and I'm like, has no one told him? no one's told him.
Singunius.
For years, anyway.
Yeah, anyway, the point of that story is I now know who Valdor is.
Yeah.
But it's quite, everyone tells you off for saying read the heresy first, because they're like, she's not going to get loads of the stuff.
Yeah.
But actually, when I do make the connections backwards, it's the best feeling. It's really cool.
Yeah. So this is set before the Imperium. It's set before the Great Crusade has started. We're at the end of the Emperor uniting Earth, which is this big thing. For 5,000 years, all warp travel's been cut off. Different plot to do with the Eldar.
It's called the Age of Strife.
The Age of Strife. And it's what when the Great Crusade happens at the start of the heresy, it's what they're trying to bring everyone back from. In the Age of Strife, all the systems were cut off from each other. Everyone developed their own little cultures. No one could communicate. and Earth just destroyed itself. It became Mad Max. And there were warring warlords and tons of different empires and horrific mutation and psychics and all these armies just walking around, mercenary armies with all their weird old technologies. And at the end of the Age of Strife, the Emperor rises, and unlike all the other warlords that have come before, actually unites the planet. And then the minute the warp storms stop, sends out on the Great Crusade. And in order to do that, he has to like build an empire, build a palace, unite the planet, and get them to be up for it. Like, there's a bit. One of the nice things about the book is there's a bit of like army stuff here. Oh, you just united a planet with armies, but much more of it's about like, what does it mean, and how do you convince people it's worth it?
I mean, who wakes up in the morning? Woke up in the morning for a cup of ambition, like fucking. I mean, did I swear? But come on, that's that's a long to-do list. Unite planet.
And this is sent like this is one of the things we see in this book is the very first time Space Marines are ever seen.
Yes.
Yeah, like
the creation of Primarchs and Space Marine secrets are revealed. Yeah, that should be the clickbaity.
Really specifically, this is set. We've almost finished. They've almost conquered Earth. There's still holdouts. The war's still going on. The Emperor has gone away to Luna to talk to the Selenar, who are these gene cultists on Luna. Which will definitely turn into war at some point, but whatever, he's away. The Primarch project has happened and they've been scattered, but no one knows that in the Imperium. They don't know what Primarchs are. No. And the Space Marines project has started without the Primarchs, but they haven't been seen yet. The main character isn't Valdor. It's a High Lord, a very, very early High Lord of Terror from right when they were first set up. Kandawire, one of the best characters of the whole series for me. Uoma Kandawire is brilliant.
Why do you love Kandawire?
She's just one of those characters that's good because she's not a cool warrior.
Yeah.
Like she's
normal.
Old, she's like really short and round and cantankerous. She's very astute. She's a brilliant character. So she's the main character. But cool. Ostensibly, the book's about Valdor.
Yeah.
Valdor is the Captain General of the Legio Custodes. The Legio Custodes are the bodyguards of the Emperor. You would have seen them. They're dressed in gold, big pointy helmets.
Yeah.
And they're the bodyguard of the Emperor. And they are like actually the very first genetically engineered things he made. Okay. And the difference is that unlike Space Marines, who are genetically engineered from people who are like teenagers and then given loads of organs and made into soldiers, the Custodes are gene-smithed individually from like a 3-year-old.
Yes.
Which means they're way too expensive to make an army of.
Yeah, they're like custom made. This is really interesting because someone was trying to explain it to me.
You've basically, at this era, you've got three. You've got because there's Thunder Warriors we'll get to as well, which are a different thing.
Custodes are like bespoke cars. Thunder Warriors are like janky old vehicles, and Space Marines are mass production trucks.
Yeah, sort of. All of them. Well, yeah. Okay, yeah, sort of. So basically, he goes through various stages. The first thing he does is make the Custodes, which are brilliant.
And how does he make them? Is it out of his own genes? Or?
No, they're gene wrought. They're they basically are like rewritten, genetically rewritten from the ground up. But they start as like a toddler. So they're a toddler taken and then rewritten from the ground up.
Ooh.
And the point is
that's a lot.
Very psychically resistant. There's a question about they're completely dedicated to being individual bodyguards of the Emperor. So there's a common theme you see in the heresy books where they're described as warriors, not soldiers. When people see them fight, it's not a unit all fighting with tactics. Each of them individually is a brilliant warrior.
Wow.
And they all know where to be, but they don't fight like soldiers would.
Got it.
And so...
and they still exist in 40k?
Yeah, they do. They're in a 40k army. But they're very, very powerful. And their leader is Constantin Valdor, who was the first one made, built from the ground up and by the Emperor. And there is a big question about Valdor about how much he's even capable of... Are they even capable of saying no to an order from the Emperor?
Yeah.
They're built so much, they don't... How much free will do they even have?
Yeah.
In the same way that a lot of Space Marines have this love for their Primarch, but a lot of them still go against their Primarch. With the Custodes, the question is always, are you even capable of not following the Emperor?
No.
Yeah. And we find this. So we start this. I should say I did nick a load of this. I did do it for my notes because I'd read this ages ago and I did reread it, but I forgot to write many notes. So I nicked a load of notes from a Reddit post I found by someone who was then banned, possibly because of what's in their username, which is why I'm not going to say it.
Okay.
Anyway, but the notes are fine. So we start this with... a new intro.
Yeah.
Instead of the usual, it's like, the Emperor has come to unify Terra with the Thunder Legions, and the greatest of his warriors is Valdor. And then the novel starts with this weird like transcript. There's a few of these in the book because the way it works of a subject waking up in a lab with no memory of who he was.
It's Daddy talking.
Yeah, it's the Emperor and Valdor, and there's some really interesting things. He gets asked abstract questions on the nature of power and responsibility. The Emperor character points out that not only is this the only time you're ever going to be able to ask questions, ask all your questions because a guy who's just woken up, because you're not going to be able to once it all kicks in.
Yeah.
The lack of free will. He points out that he isn't a god, but also that he's going to become something else. Like this is, ask me questions now because soon I'll be something else and you won't be able to ask me anymore. Like there's this idea that there's this whole thing in the heresy where the Emperor's like losing his humanity. The gamble the Emperor did was, I am going to willingly sacrifice my humanity as I go through to become powerful enough to do things like the Imperium.
I didn't know that. And that's actually like a spoken thing.
Like he's more of a human back when.
Yeah.
And then as he gets more and more powerful, he becomes less and less.
He sacrifices humanity for us.
Sacrifices his own humanity. So there's a bit of that where he's like, I'm not going to become a god, but I am going to become something else. And if you want an honest answer, ask it now. He also says there's a great thing like, when he justifies that, he brings up this phrase like, "There's no such thing as a free lunch."
Yeah.
like if I'm going to become powerful enough to unify humanity, I have to give something.
I mean,
and you have to be made into this bodyguard.
I love these little moments, and there seem to be a few more like harkenings back to more our history, maybe because it's set earlier. But I'm just so excited for any mention of the Emperor. I really want Games Workshop to put together a compendium of every time we canon, i.e. in a Black Library book, see the Emperor.
Yeah, I'm sure that might exist already. There's a quote, information, data, in the days to come, that may be all I can give you. I can already feel it creeping up. You pay a price for all things, and this is mine. I will become less than human. Is the Emperor talking to Valdor? Yeah. So then we cut away from that. So that's mysterious. We don't know what it is. They're just called Subject 1 and Subject 2, but obviously it's that. So we meet up our first character, right?
Yeah.
Uwama Kandawaya. She's one of the High Lords of Terror, which is a really new thing, and she is the Grand Provost Marshal of the Arbites, which sort of maybe exists, but they're basically like the police.
Yeah.
So she's meant to be the person in charge of keeping the law.
Got it.
Uwama Kandawaya. She's taken a long journey on a really crap flyer, so no one knows. She gets all the fancy golden flyers of the palace, but she gets a really long journey.
She's doing a secret mission.
Yeah, and her like archaeologists are basically doing a dig on a place called Mount Ararat, which is real.
Yeah. That's where the stone tablets were made in biblical times, right?
Possibly.
Do we have to fact check religion?
Fact check
religion check.
So Mount Ararat, and they're basically the plot is that they've found evidence of a battle, and she has her suspicions confirmed. There was a massacre here, and it was covered up, and there were bits of gold-like ceramic material they find in it. They find a bit with like the symbol of unity, which is before the Aquila. There was a symbol which was a raptor's head with lightning bolts.
Oh, cool.
And she says that was a symbol of, before the Imperium, was a symbol of a unification. And there's a great quote, like, she says, I argued against that image. I told them it set the wrong tone. We were builders, not destroyers. An eagle builds nothing but its own eyrie, and a storm merely ravages. One of many arguments I lost. They were after a different message.
Completely different message.
They were after a different message.
Let's put skulls on everything too.
And then when they find it, like she's talking to her aide, and he's like, is this not the end? And he's like, no, this isn't the beginning, she muttered. Just a continuation, just a breath. This is routine killing, Sevu, the unskilled business of humanity, and we haven't seen the last of it.
I think this is a really lovely tonally. So this character, we learn, has kind of grown up through civilization going to pot, people living in compounds, warlords taking over, and basically she's taken on this role because she wants, she doesn't want the world to be like that. So, but what actually really reminded me of was the Octavia Butler book, Parable of the Sower, which describes a similar breakdown and how you're not safe unless you're in the compound. So the Emperor has given her hope. Yeah, and
there's a load of points in it where she's like, it took us ages to even... She's not even... The whole book really is about her being not sure if this is actually just another warlord or if this is finally civilization with the rule of law.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's very much the plot. It's like... So she's discovered that there's a massacre here. This is evidence in whatever she thought was happening. And then we get like a bit of exploration of like where we are. So it's the final days of unification. The Emperor's away, leaving Malcador and Valdor in charge. There's constant references to the fact that those three are seen as like a triumvirate. There's like the warrior, the scholar, and the ruler, the scholar, and the warrior.
Yeah. And we saw Malcador at the end of Flight of the Eisenstein on the moon, locking down, that poor crew that were just like, can we please try and save the world? So I'm not a fan of Malcador immediately.
Malcador's like, he's like
Is he like an evil Grand Vizier?
Yeah, he's like the Grand Vizier guy. Yeah, and he's like the other half of the Emperor at the time. So you see the Emperor and Malcador, no one has ever remembered a time where there was one but not the other. And because Malcador's a perpetual like the Emperor. And then Valdor's the third of that. So Valdor's also the one that no one's ever remembered a time when there wasn't those three in charge. The Emperor, Valdor, and Malcador. The Emperor, so the Emperor's largely subdued the planet, but there are still bastions that are against him. Some of that is through war, some of that is through people just siding with him. We get a history of the High Lords. So there's only recently been High Lords. Unification expanded. They needed some bureaucrats.
Yeah.
The greatest of the bureaucrats were the 4 High Lords. There's 12 by 40k, but the 4 High Lords, which are the Master of the Administratum, which is bureaucracy, the Grand Provost Marshal, it's the law, Chancellor of the Estates Imperium, which is money, and the Lord Commander Militant of the Imperial Armies.
There you go. And
so
we know that some of the heresy authors gave themselves this title.
Yes, yeah. The grand, we meet. I think she talks about like the guy who's the Master of the Administratum being essentially he was descended from some like American families which were fabulously wealthy, and he willingly joined the Emperor with a load of armies. So therefore there needed to be a reward for that, and the reward was, right, you're in charge of the civilian government then. Because not everyone was conquered. A lot of people were like, well, I'll join you with my massive army and area of land because I'm just very rich. What can I have?
Gosh,
that's how you knit it together. It's the politics
just
of it.
Prescient, isn't it, for our future?
It's one of the things I always like about 40k. I just did a couple of videos about like the politics of the High Lords and how it's run.
Yeah.
Is that it's very realistically not as simple as just conquering a planet.
No.
You don't just walk in with an army and conquer it. No one does that.
No.
That never happens. It's always, what alliances do you make and what do you have to give people to, and how does that screw up their interpersonal relationships?
Oof,
Anyway.
Sometimes it's better just to be a servitor.
She's getting ready with her aide, Armina, for a meeting with Valdor. They complain about the palace is being built. So it's always noisy and the showers are cold and the electricity doesn't work all the time.
And this is going to be the palace that we see,
the
right?
Imperial Palace. So they've flattened the Himalayas to build a palace on them.
This is quite thrilling, hearing about the working, this is the DIY aspect of what is eventually going to be a fought over seat of the Emperor.
There's a great line through this where constantly various characters are like, oh, they're building this palace. This is a stupid place to build a palace. And then other people are like, this is a great place to build a palace. It's like Valdor's like, this is stupid. It's like, it's a massive load of work. It's basically like, it's difficult to defend. It's up in this mountain range. The air is thin. We have to do so much to just make there be enough oxygen. Kandawai is like, this is perfect. It's a symbol of hope for the whole planet. And then her assistants are like, this is stupid. There's just this, it's just thrown away in passing that everyone has an opinion on whether this is a good place to build the Imperial Palace.
But we know it is, because if you're popping a beacon out, you need to be up high.
You flattened the tops of the Himalayas to build a palace.
Even them
with
off.
The size of a city. It's madness. Anyway, so Armina's like, basically, it's clear that they've put some events in motion. She's got her own events in motion because of this thing they found. And Armina's like, why are you meeting with him? You know the answer. And
she's like, you have to hope.
Yeah, you have to hope. The law binds them, Kandawai went on. That's what makes the Emperor worth serving. The clasp click closed and she let her hands fall again. At least that's what we must believe. Which Armina says, will you at least make the attempt not to insult him?
There we go.
And you have a little flashback to Kandawai's childhood, growing up in Africa in a compound hiding from the raiders, and why she thinks like that. Her dad's like, why is the world so shit? And her dad's like, oh, because the warrior's in charge. Whenever the warrior's in charge, then things stop working. For things to work, the warrior is the servant of the worker. The worker makes things work. The warrior makes wars. Yeah.
Jesus. I mean, reading this book, it's a bit bleak. Thinking about what's going on in our world.
Yeah.
You know,
the warrior, the servant of the worker.
There's points where the Grimdark's not matching up to current living situations, which is slightly worrying.
So she goes for this meeting with Valdor.
Yeah.
Valdor's just sitting there. They've evidently got an allotted amount of time, which is important. And she opens with, like, you realise suddenly what this is. She opens with Constantin Valdor, Captain General of the Legio Custodes, she said, trying to keep her voice level. By the authority vested in me by the High Council of Terra, I hereby place you under a state of formal inquiry. By statute of the Lex Pacifica, you are required to answer all and any of my questions.
Wow.
So she's interviewing him as a policeman.
She's reading the Miranda rights.
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
the
yeah.
right to remain silent. Yeah, I mean, this was a great gamble, and you think, is this poor person going to be like eviscerated?
Yeah.
But no.
And there is a bit of it. There's a conversation he has with there's another custodes called Samanas.
Yeah.
And Samanas is like, should I just kill her?
Yeah.
And she's like, no, we're meant to be following the law now. We have to do this properly. I will have the interview,
Yeah.
Valdor says.
It's a new way.
Yeah. So anyway, they have this interview. He's very forthcoming, very polite. And he goes into the history. They start talking about the Thunder Warriors, which are this army that conquered Earth for them. The Legio Cataigis.
Right.
And
This is the first I've heard of the Thunder Warriors.
so the Thunder Warriors are this thing from the lore that was always talked about. And basically the idea is, first the Emperor made the Custodes, which were singular and so expensive and resource heavy to make that you can't have an army of them. They're just his bodyguards. So then he had to find a better way of making an army of these. And he starts with the Thunder Warriors, which are adults given augmentations. But and they conquer the
Just
world.
like normal humans.
Normal human adult soldiers
Yeah.
who are then given loads of augmentations to make them really, really strong and fast and tough. And they are what lead the armies of Unity. But they're nightmarishly unstable. They're divided into 20 legions, we find out, which is interesting.
Yeah.
They're led by people called Primarchs, who are not like any genetically better. They're just
the leaders.
good warriors.
Yeah.
They're like very, very strong but very hyper aggressive. And he describes this battle against this place called the Mollen Sen Confederacy, which is this. It's up in the frozen north. It's meant to be like horrific warp that the priest king rules it, and it's full of horrific mutated people. And it's the first place they go and try and put down. They're like, right, that's the sort of thing we don't want on Terra anymore. We're going to go and destroy Mollen Sen. And they do it with it's the first outing of the Thunder Warriors.
It's interesting it's called a confederacy.
Yeah. Loads of unaugmented soldiers died. But at the height of the fighting, Valdor sees the Thunder Warriors. They go into a crazed frenzy. Their Primarch, Ushatan, who's the Primarch of the 4th Legion, it's like a crazed barbarian warlord. Like he says, the Thunder Warriors were very human. Like emotion wasn't stripped of them like with the Space Marines. So they'd go mad in combat. They would also like just die. Like they'd spontaneously drop dead. They'd go into a fugue state, stop following orders. They'd go into cannibalistic fits. They were really unstable, both mentally and physically.
Not
they'd just
dateable at all.
Die. No, not on the marry kill date list. Not on any of them. And then Kandawaya gets to the point, which is essentially she goes, "What happened at Mount Ararat? What happened to the Thunder Legions?
Yeah.
We haven't heard from any of the Thunder Warriors in months. What happened?
What did you do to all the Thunder
What
Warriors?
did you do to them all?"
Yeah.
At which Valdor goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've been talking so long. We've run out of interview time."
That's a bit like these videos.
Yeah. There's a great quote here where he says, when he's talking to Ushatan, the Primarch of the Thunder Warriors.
Got it.
And he goes, he told me that he understood for the first time the reason he'd been made. He told me that I would never feel the same way, because Valdor has barely any emotions left. And he pitied me for that. Did you respond, says Kandawaya. I was troubled, as I recall, not by the comment, nor by the implied insult, but by the sentiment expressed. I felt as if we had unleashed something that would be hard to keep within bounds.
Oof.
Where did this feeling lead you, Kandawaya says. Where did this feeling lead you, Kandawaya, Captain General? And it's like, his Valdor's like, I'm obviously great and have no feelings, but these guys are crazy. This is a bad idea.
Wow. It is so epic to think that people had conversations with the Emperor.
Yeah.
I love it because he's been a mystery so long.
Yeah. But the further you go back, the more human he is because of that whole thing. Yeah. There's a guy called Ofar who's like Kandawaya's oldest friend, so like protector.
Yeah.
And he's like been doing disguises, and he's noticed that there's loads of armaments going into the palace that are going somewhere they don't know where.
Yeah.
And there's fewer custodes on the battlements. They're all inside somewhere we don't know where. So something's weird. And Armina and Ophar are like, you need to give the go order now. Something's happening.
Yeah.
They're about to do something.
We're in trouble.
We're in trouble. You need to give the go order for whatever you're planning.
Yeah.
And she says yes, but on the basis she can stop it at any time.
Yeah.
So then we get to the second interview. Would you like some more tea?
I'd love some more tea.
Maybe we should do tea reviews on the channel. That'd be better, wouldn't it?
Lovely.
This is a lovely rose rooibos tea from Greenwich Market.
It smells really fragrant and it's really nice and kind of even.
I'm drinking out of a Mickey Mouse cup. There we are. Brilliant.
Mm.
Anyway, so we go into the second interview. Valdor tells a story about the worst day of his life. And it's interesting because we all know what this is.
This makes me so sad as well, hearing about this day. Primarch babies.
Primarch babies.
Really freshly formed.
There was, and they're scattered.
This is
Primarch babies.
Such a sad moment.
So, Malcador and Valdor were talking about the future of the Thundorians when they hear a big alarm.
Yeah.
And something happens. They race, where it is so deep and far away that it takes them ages to get there. When they get there, the underground lab is collapsing. It's under the Emperor's psychic might is holding up. There's loads of people are dying from psychic backlash.
Yeah.
As the warp rift that sucked off all the Primarchs has done that.
Okay, so this is sorry, I'm just ignoring the rudeness. We try so hard to keep things PG-13. So this is one of the legends. What happened to the Primarchs? How were they scattered?
We don't know yet.
We don't know, but the implication is that there was a sucking from the chaos from the warp.
Yeah, some sort of warp rift.
Something so strong that Emperor was trying to hold up the vault.
Yeah, it destroyed that vault they were all in. The actual Primarchs were sucked off into the warp.
They were lost.
And it was a tragedy. Anyway, he's like, it's a tragedy. Valdor, Custodes, and the chief researcher of the Primarch project, a new character we find out is called Amar Astarte. Yeah. Gathered as much of the genetic imperial lore and data as they could. And when they were dragged out at the end, the whole structure came burying down. The whole structure came down, burying the Primarch project forever. It's the first warp incursion, and he says I began to understand the true nature of what we were set against then. The priest king of modern Sen was just a shard cut from this dark crystal, a mere sliver of a greater abomination. I could breathe it in there. I could taste its essence like wormwood on my tongue. On some days, even now, I can still taste it.
Gross.
So he's realizing that, this is the bad guy. It's the warp.
Yeah.
And Mol and Sen, all those weird sorcerers of Earth that we conquered, they were like a bit of it, but this is the problem.
They had been touched by the shard, maybe, and it's interesting that they say the Priest King was just a shard cut from this dark crystal.
Yeah.
Because quite a lot, when the warp spreads, it is if you've
touched
effect or something.
Yeah.
But they realising that the Emperor has foreseen the warp. So the Emperor's trying to do his best. And someone stole his babies. But, massive point here. So this is not answering the question, the warp just sucked them out. No,
it doesn't answer that question. This is Valdor's point of view. He's like, the warp got them all.
Yeah.
We got there and it was disaster.
But we think it's more than just the warp.
We get to that later. There is another plot that we get to in about 30 books where they start talking about that.
And let's talk about, I've always thought that the Adeptus Astarte were named because Astarte stars.
No, they're named
this is huge.
For Astarte, who made them.
Is huge.
Amar Astarte.
Amara, and not only that, and we talk about this at the end, but the Primarchs kind of have a mum and a dad.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a bit as well. But so the middle of the book. So the Custodes Samanas is like, "You sure you don't want me to just kill her?" And Valdor's like, "No. We do lore now. Also they're like they kind of know what she's planning."
Yeah, and there's also a feeling the whole way through this book that Valdor is never in any threat, any weakness.
No.
Everything's going to happen is going to happen.
And he has no opinions about it. He's not even angry.
No, and they're on the brink of this whole new journey, so he doesn't, it's like she's a flea or something.
Yeah, he's doing it because this is what you do in an empire.
Yeah.
The middle part of the book then goes into the preparations for Kandawai is essentially organising a coup, because she thinks, basically Kandawai's thought is the Custodes murdered the Thunder Warriors, which is what happened.
She's like, the Emperor's promised to kind of look after us all and unify us, but actually
you've killed
all the army, you've brought your own ones in,
and you haven't even asked.
Can we kill this army?
It's the army of the Imperium. We're the High Lords of the Imperium.
Yeah.
You have just decided to murder the whole army, and you haven't even told us.
No.
That's a naked power grab. It's
a worry. It's
and
concerning.
so she's like, right, well, we're going to lead an army to you because we need to stop you from becoming a tyrant. Yeah. So she's covertly gathered loyal army troopers, and she's working with a group of surviving Thunder Warriors who missed the culling.
Which makes me sad.
And the dying Primarch Ushutan, who's still miraculously alive. And they're all travelling up to the palace. So you see the convoy travelling up through the Himalayas.
Yeah.
You get a load of weird... So you don't really get much from Ushutan, but you get this like random soldiers. You get Akilla the Soldier, which is a really nice point of view character. Absolute arsehole. So Akilla the Soldier is like... he'd been fighting on the right, and then he saw a custodian.
Yeah.
This golden monster, he calls it. He's like, Akilla found himself appalled. That level, he like kicks over a tank. Yes. And he's like, that level of naked power was unfair. There could be no enjoyment in it. There's no chance that the other one might strike a lucky blow. No. It's just wrong. Yeah. And his point is like, he's like a mercenary in all the various armies that just constantly have wars, which are like skirmishes. And then suddenly the emperors come, and it's like actual war where everyone on the losing side dies because he's got horrific gene-crafted monsters. And he's like, what do I do? Akilla's like in the Imperial Army now because he's like, well, I can't... Suddenly people don't think it's very cool that I'm a mercenary anymore because there's this new civilization.
I mean, this whole section where they're realising the immensity of the Custodes and they're going up the foothills really reminded me of that poem, Into the Valley of Death, Rode the 5,000. You know, it's so futile. You're like,
and I think they know that like Akilla works for the Imperial Army, but he's like now marching up on the orders to try with the Thunder Warriors to try and stop these new Custodes because he's like this isn't fair and it's not fun anymore. I used to be a cool mercenary fighting all these little skirmishes,
not anymore,
and now it's like literal, we're going to take over the planet or you die. And this isn't the sort of cool thing he was. Anyway, so we get a bit more. So Kandawai doesn't want to like depose the emperor, but she wants Valdor arrested and she wants an explanation and then put on trial for massacring the Imperium's army without the authorization of the High Lords. That's the important thing, the rule of law. And she joined the emperor because she wanted to escape like all the old warlords. So
she was hoping for a better life. Like she wants the unification to happen. She's hoping there's going to be some justification for this barbarism.
We also meet Amor Astarte, who is this scientist who turns out to be one of the leaders of the Astartes project. So she was involved in the Primarchs and she's the person making the Space Marines. And she grew up as a prodigy on a war-plagued Terra, survived by giving intelligence to warlords, basically, learned Dark Age lore, eventually came to work for the Emperor, saw that the Emperor was like, you're the best person to do this, you do it.
So the Emperor and she were both into gene crafting.
Which was a common thing that happened then. It was just the Emperor and her were much better than everyone else. Amor Astarte is also in on the rebellion. So she's done this whole thing where she's slowly, selectively, genetically bred a whole regiment of soldiers that no one knows are secretly like hypno-loyal to her. So she's this regiment of soldiers that are in the palace are secretly loyal to her. And she's basically come to the belief that without the Primarchs to give the her new Astartes genetic stability, they're going to go crazy like the Thunder Warriors. So she needs to terminate the whole project.
She also is a very interesting character who is centuries old but hasn't done any regen.
Well, she hasn't. She's done the regen to live, but she refused to do the regen to make her look younger.
So
she thinks it's fundamentally a bit weird that she's so old.
So when you're looking at this character, you have to imagine like a super wizened human who's still active and but we get very used to reading about people using Rejuvenat.
To make them look young.
So interesting.
So these are all going to do a coup, basically. She also mentions about Valdor's origins, that like the Emperor scoured the globe to find a baby suitable to be Valdor.
I mean, the babies toddlers thing is so alarming. This part of Warhammer.
Moved entire armies across continents just to locate and retrieve him. There's a thing also that you find in other books that the Custodes in this era are made from the children of rebel leaders. So they're all nobles.
Oh my lord.
And when the noble rebels, the Emperor's like, your 2-year-old's now going to be a Custodes. And it's reworked into a perfectly loyal servant who doesn't remember a thing.
So sometimes you have to like forget this stuff. Otherwise, So
Astarte, the notes here are like, Astarte tries to pull an Order 66.
What does it say?
Which is in when the clone troopers turn on the
Oh,
Jedi.
no. Yeah.
So they all suddenly turn. While the custodians are in the gene vaults, the Castellan Exemplars, which is this regiment, all turn against the other defenders of the palace.
Yeah.
At the same time, Candawire's army arrives. Candawire goes out in this big, cool, like many-wheeled car.
Yeah. In a massive snowstorm is raging outside.
People are dying. There's a huge snowstorm. It's the middle of the night.
Yeah.
They come against the palace gates, which are not finished yet. Candawire, Ushatan, and all the Thunder Warriors and her coup army are then confronted in the open foundations of the Senatorum Imperialis, which the government will be once they're the government, by Valdor. And Ushatan and the Thunder Warriors are like, you dick, we're here for revenge.
Yeah.
And Candawire's like, Candawire's like, she doesn't know anything about the Great Crusade, so it's obvious that Valdor's planning something, but she's like, what are you doing?
She's oblivious. She thinks, he's come to get judgment, it's good that he's having a chat.
Yeah.
Little does she know.
Valdor tells them this is their last chance to surrender. They refuse. He presses a switch, and from vaults underground, a load of grey-clad warriors in power armour come out, marked with the insignia eye, and armed with, like, great big guns.
It took me ages to get that's one.
Yeah. Huh?
I for one.
No, it's I for Imperium. It's like the Inquisitorial
I
symbol.
for First Legion.
No. So they're basically the very first Dark Angels, the very first Legion, the Angels of Death. And they describe it from the point of view of the Thunder Warriors, that they fight like emotionless automatons, using teamwork and relishing nothing, unlike the Thunder Warriors. Ushatan says that he doesn't like them.
Yeah.
Valdor goes, no, neither do I. For what it's worth, I don't like them either.
No, Space Marines.
So they have a big old fight.
For us,
Samanas is charged with dealing with Astarte. Astarte is trying to set the entire gene vault of Space Marines to blow up.
I really felt for her in this moment.
She's like, this is going to go wrong.
I felt like she was trying to do the right thing by her children. It was so mad. And
this is going to go wrong. Yeah. She actually blows the vault up. But Samanas survives.
She sacrifices herself.
Yeah, she sacrifices herself. Ushatan and Valdor fight.
The last of the Thunder Warrior Primarchs.
Yeah, Valdor's very sad about killing him. As he goes to put Ushatan out of his misery, the Primarch Ushatan says he always felt bad for Valdor. The Thunder Warriors had short lives, but they still lived them as human. Valdor had all the humanity and emotion sucked from him and can't feel anything besides duty. And Valdor agrees. It's like, that's about right, and then stabs him.
This is a bit like I have seen lasers off C-SPAN.
Yeah, I've seen C-beams glitter in the Tannhauser Gate.
Yeah.
Sea lasers on C-SPAN. Okay, good.
McCarriage. It's a bit Blade Runner, replicant versus,
So then we have a little bit at the end. Malkador arrives back. He was with the Emperor and Luna, scouting things out. They basically,
what's going on here?
They basically get back and go, don't worry, we had a spare gene full of Space Marines anyway, so that wasn't a problem. Valdor's like, Emperor believes that the Primarch's still alive, and Valdor's like, oh god, they're awful, they've probably been corrupted. Like, Valdor's like, the Thunder Warriors were terrible, the Space Marines are terrible, the Primarchs are terrible, everything's terrible.
Yeah, Valdor's like a bit of a cynic.
No, we're perfect, everyone else is shit.
You get along with Valdor. I have to say the futileness of the mum figure, Astarte, blowing herself up. And then at the end of the book, as I was saying, all along, Valdor was like, nothing's wrong. And they're like, oh, don't worry, we had copies of everything she did. Yeah. It's just in the face of Imperium, resistance is futile.
Yeah, it's completely, so... they say, well, where that lab used to be, they're going to start to build this matrix for the webway to try and get into the webway. So that's going to become the Imperial dungeon where the Golden Throne is.
This is so exciting.
They actually say, like, the palace construction is going well. All it needs now is a throne.
There you go. They need to animate this. This is epic. I love this.
And then finally at the end, Candawire is confronted by Valdor. But weirdly, he spares her. She goes off with Ophar and just lives her life. She runs off and makes a small farm outside of the palace perimeter.
Yeah, I mean, this is crazy. I've never known a Warhammer book to end like this, but Candawire basically sees the future, sees the Space Marines, the ascension of the Space Marines, realises...
There is no real law here.
There's no real law. There is going to be unity, but at what cost?
Yeah.
And is given, Valdor's kind of like, you see how this is? And then she's free... And as I always say, if I lived in the 40k universe, please just give me a farm on a beach planet and leave me out of it.
Yeah.
She's given that grace.
And that's like a thing that you find in a lot of these early stories. There's a few more like this. Like the reason a lot of people, not the reason Horus rebels, but the reason a lot of people rebel against the Emperor early on is not that he's trying to do unity. He is trying to unify the human race, but he's doing it at any cost. And the things like the civilian administration is a facade you put up that rules them.
Yeah.
But you do whatever's needed. And an awful lot of people at various points basically go, the cost's too much. This is inhumane. Even though, and even though the stakes potentially are humanity being eaten by aliens, a lot of people are like, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Like, let's hope, we never experience an alien threat that requires half of us to be assimilated or our children be gene stolen and
Gene
stuff.
stolen. Gene stole the toddlers. Just more tea.
Gene Stolen and the Zing Zang Zoo, one of my favourite bands.
There's some tea.
This is such a great idea. We need to
tea,
do tea in our book club
This needs to be a thing.
Why isn't there Warhammer tea?
Why isn't there Warhammer tea?
Maybe that we could start a business.
It should be a thing. Oh, like those people at Comic Con who sell D&D tea. Yeah.
See us at Comic Con with our Tau tea.
Our Tau tea. Yeah. So, did you enjoy the book?
Oh, Ian, I loved it. It made my heart so happy. It felt like such a beautiful payback for wanting to know so much and for knowing that this toy franchise stands on the shoulders of people who care enough to give it this context and weave stuff in. Like, I loved it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. It's like, again, it's got everything I like, which is like, it's kind of about the little people realizing what they're in.
Yeah.
Like the whole story is about like the nature of power.
Yeah.
Like how much free will exists, not only for Valdor, but generally in the Imperium.
Yeah.
What's a lie and what does the Emperor consider necessary? And, part of it is the Emperor considers a fake civilian government who don't have real power to be a necessary thing he needs to put in to make him look like the ruler he is.
I mean, it's interesting. It also sets up the Imperium for be that hugely bureaucratic administrative nightmare that you see in planet after planet.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of it. There's got to be this council, that.
Yeah. It's got and Kandawai is interesting because she basically, the story is about Kandawai doing a coup. Yeah. But she's actually she's got pretty good motivation all the way through. Her motivation is, I need to test if this is actually a good empire with the rule of law.
Yeah.
And it isn't.
She's, you have like chaotic evil. She's like lawful good.
Yeah.
She just wants to see that law is done and there's no chaotic.
Yeah.
We have to get into a fight. It's like, can we just make this all like, can we red seal this and stamp it? Yeah.
Yeah, we learn a lot about Astarte, which is interesting.
So cool.
We learn about Valdor.
Are there more stories about the creation of the Space Marines, or is just this it?
No, this is kind of it.
That's incredible.
There's a few little flashbacks, but not really anything big.
Because I'd love to know more about Astarte, her story and stuff. But
they really steer clear of going too far into
into
explaining the Unification Wars and all that. There's a lot of weird little flashbacks to bits of the Unification Wars.
Yeah. But the thing is, now that they've finished the Horus Heresy,
maybe
there's a void.
You could do it. You get the Age of Strife. You get differences between So the Space Marines are essentially, they kill the Thunder Warriors because they've got the Space Marines, and the Space Marines are better than the Thunder Warriors. So the Space Marines you get as like prepubescent kids, and then you do a load of hypno training to them. So by the time they grow up as Space Marines, they're much more reliable and they're much more like soldiers. Whereas the Thunder Warriors were just basically barbarian warriors, and the Custodes are brilliant but completely soulless and have are too expensive to make.
It's like the Custodes are like those really luxury phones that only super rich people have. The Thunder Warriors are the Nokias, and then the iPhones come along in the form of Space Marines.
It's interesting. So they go, right, well, the Thunder Warriors are dangerous now.
I mean,
we've conquered the planet.
Yeah, I mean, you know me. Like, I'm just thinking that there could have been a way they could have kept the Thunder Warriors, but
well, there was an argument. There's a thing they always said, which was like the Space Marines are better suited. Like they're more psychically resistant to the things they're going to find in space.
Yeah.
They function more like an autonomous army. You can't send an autonomous army of Thunder Warriors off on crusade without the Emperor there. They're just going to kill everything. They're going to murder everybody.
And can you play a Thunder Warriors where
they are very much gone. They pop up a few more times in the Heresy series. You see the occasional rogue lost Thunder Warrior who managed to survive. But yeah, and they're always terrifying. They're like, a Thunder Warrior kills tons of Space Marines. They're really scary, but completely uncontrollable and liable to just drop dead.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the Primarch babies.
The Primarch babies. The Primarch babies have another maternal influence, but it's always questionable. The whole idea that they are his sons is very questionable.
I mean,
it's how it's portrayed.
In terms of if he hadn't decided to create them, they wouldn't exist. But it's not his genes or genetics.
It might be, but we're not sure. That the Primarchs often refer to him as a father, but there is a big question as to whether they would if they were raised on Terra. Like if the presumed plan, if the Primarchs weren't scattered, they would have been raised like the Custodes in the palace with the Emperor to be generals. And the Custodes don't call him father; the Custodes call him king.
Oh.
Yeah.
Intriguing.
So there's the whole I would say that one of the biggest reasons that the heresy becomes a problem, or that the Primarchs become a problem, is because they get scattered off to all these human worlds where they're taught that they're part of this ruling family, and then they think the Emperor is their dad, and the Emperor only very occasionally thinks of them as children. He mostly thinks of them as weapons that he made.
Well, maybe that's because he's losing his humanity.
Well, yeah.
When I think of who that could play the Emperor, I think of Bryan Cranston. Because I just think in Malcolm in the Middle, he was really funny and a loving dad. And then he became a drug dealer. Yeah. And it's like that, ability to just turn cold and horrible. But...
So, bastards. Oh, I've got questions. Let's do questions before the bastard scale.
Yeah.
So, Andrew N says, for Valdor, what did you think of the portrayal of the early Imperium, and how do you think it relates to the Imperium later than 30k and even later in 40k?
Well, I mean, definitely you're getting those echoes of everyone's going to have to submit. There's going to be an administrative order. There's going to be ranks, and the little people are going to be squashed. So
it's basically the same.
Yeah.
Saber Wolf says, I've always loved the line in Valdor, if you concealed your killers in the armour of gods, then they would be worshipped even as they raise their blades. Seems so poignant and applicable to the rest of 30k and 40k. It's always a shame it's buried away in a fairly obscure novella. I would say it's mentioned again in The End of the Death, which is the last novel. That the Emperor's like, the reason I'm a giant golden guy is because I have to look like a giant golden warlord, so you all think I'm scary and awesome and people look up to me.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't look like a giant golden guy. I just choose to look like this. I'm a scientist. I just choose to look like this because it's impressive and people will follow me if I do.
I mean, there is a very poignant line. All the 30 and 40k is killing, and without that currency in the world, you don't really exist. If you're not killing or being killed, you are a nothing. You're suffering. But that is the angst of it, and that's also why you can't get too attached to anything in 30 and 40k.
How Angaboda says, how was the transition from more generic post-apocalypse sci-fi to the Warhammer stuff we're all familiar with? I think mostly of the army guy who feels like the custodians are cheating when he sees them kick over tanks. I agree. And I'm that's one of the things I like, is like the nice thing about the Unification Wars is it feels way more chaotic in not the chaotic sense. Like chaotic in the like, whoa, we're in Mad Max now. Yeah.
I agree. I think it's the same thing, the mixing of normal humans with superpowered individuals, and seeing all that kind of like real life stuff, like hearing about, this is how I grew up on this farm and I was terrified, and hearing about a scientist compared to these monsters, or
all this massive empire they're all part of.
It's mad. I mean, we were talking about the author, so this is Chris Wraight, and I just really enjoyed the writing.
Have we read any Chris Wraight? Chris Wraight's really, really good, and he comes up a lot more in the Horus Heresy after this.
I'm excited to read more Chris Wraight.
He's a really good one. People really enjoy Chris Wraight. And I like that army guy who's like, there is that realization where he's like, he's just been this mercenary doing border skirmishes for ages, and he's kind of a bit of a celebrity, because if you're the guy with the gun, of course you are. Yeah. Everyone's like, you're so great, thanks for saving us. I mean, here's some money. And then he suddenly gets a taste of like, that's a professional army run by an emperor who is not, this is not because he's not doing it to be cool. He's actually steamrolling all the other armies, and you end up signing up, but you don't get any of the cool, I'm the leader of this town stuff. You're just working for the emperor.
Exactly.
And he thinks it's a bad thing.
Well, I mean, it's that thing of all the warlords who were rulers of their domain becoming little fish as they are eaten. And even the Thunder Warriors, who were the big fish, they get eaten by the bigger fish, and kicking over a tank just basically is Warhammer.
Unfair, isn't it? Favourite female characters we've met so far?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
They even listed
And
it.
listed Kandawaya, Olaton, Keeler, Anarada from Spirit of the Emperor, Medea Betancourt, Bequin, both Bequins, Honan Mu. I do like Honan Mu. Tona Creed, Amberley Vale, Serena D'Angelis of the Barrel fame.
Yeah.
Becca Kinska. If you go for Honan Mu, you've got Roxana Saeed.
Wow. I mean, we're just talking about favourite characters. I mean, Astarte is not in there.
She's not in there, but she should be, yeah.
But definitely for me, I'm looking for like iconic stars that were referred back to in codex and stuff.
Yeah.
So Astarte, I think, would be one, and then Euphrates Keeler, obviously another. In terms of like who I'd want to hang, I mean, even though she's a blank, the Bequins are my favourites, and I think that character can hold her own in whatever books they're in.
Also has been written about the Bequins than anyone else here.
Yeah. I really enjoy the way all the female Gaunt ghosts are written as well. It's not too, they're very well-rounded characters.
Yeah, there's some very good ones, like Anna Kurth, I always think is really well written.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are some female characters in Eisenhorn's gang that are sometimes they're a little bit Bond girl.
Yeah.
Eisenhorn's wife. Do you remember Eisenhorn has a wife?
No, he has an ex-partner. Yeah, Cressida Doctor Lady.
Okay, they're friends with benefits.
Yeah.
But, these people...
Mrs. Doctor Lady.
Yeah. These people do stick in my mind. And
Crezia... I can't remember that last name, yeah.
It's really interesting. I'm going to prefix this sentence by saying, as a woman. Like, as a woman, when you have these characters that are part of the narrative, it does feel like it gives me a smile, because there's a thought about, women in what is a very, very male-orientated fighter universe. And, thank goodness, most of them are written really, really well. And I always think about early D&D, where women were like...
Shane Malbikini.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure if I looked at early White Dwarf, we might see some of that.
Oh, yeah, totally, yeah.
Yeah, but in the books, I really enjoy them, and they're given, like, they are the turning points. For example, Kandawaya carries this, it's her perspective.
Yeah, and it's her gender is irrelevant in this story.
Yeah,
She's a terrifying human. She's brilliant.
Yeah.
I also really like Anarada.
Yes, Anarada.
Yeah.
I mean, don't ask us to choose favourites, I think. Let us just appreciate... we haven't had any women on the bastard scale yet, have we?
We probably should have at some point. Yeah, who's on the bastard? Yeah, we haven't. Have we had any women on the bastard scale? I don't know.
I don't think so.
People are tracking the bastard scale, so they can answer those questions.
Even Serena, it wasn't her fault.
Becca Kinska's on the bastard scale.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Becca's on the bastard scale.
Yeah.
Is Petronella Vivar on the bastard scale?
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if we put her
probably.
on the bastard scale.
I think maybe they should be.
Magard and Vivar.
What are we going to do about the bastard scale?
We just keep thinking of random numbers and
Okay.
and without any recourse to what anyone else is rated.
Eventually someone sends us a grid and then we'll have a look at it.
And then we know we'd never look at it.
Yeah.
So otherwise it'll influence what we give these things. It should make no sense
Is
at
it like
all.
quantum bastard scale?
Yeah. We don't want it to influence our things.
Okay.
So in this book, bastard scale.
I'm just quickly double checking, because Valdor's such a unique book, to see if I've got anything else to ask you. So we're going to potentially find out about more maternal influences on the Primarchs to look forward to. Are there any more stories set during the chaotic early days of the Imperium on Terra?
No. There are lots of flashbacks,
Okay, good.
but no full novel.
Okay. All right then.
All right, so bastard scale. Obvious first one, Valdor.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for us to perceive him as a bastard because
He has no free
emotion.
will.
Yeah.
He can't choose anything.
He
can't be on the bastard scale, right? Because being a bastard requires you to be able to choose to be a dick.
Yeah.
And Valdor is incapable of making a decision.
Exactly. But I also
or at least
think
a decision based on any emotion or vindictiveness.
there was kind of some honour around, like when he was killing the Thunder Warrior Primarch, there was like honour in that. It wasn't like, it was like, this is inevitable, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I do think, I don't know if he's a bastard or not. I'd give him a 4, 5.
4, okay. All
What
right.
about you?
Yeah, no, I'd go lower. I might be like 1 on the bastard scale.
Yeah.
In that he's on it, but he can't really be
I think that's a more
judged on
sensible
it.
thing. I'm going to put mine down to 1 too.
Yeah.
On the slider.
And the only other bastard in here, because there isn't really a lot of people we know enough about to be a bastard. Like you don't know enough about
No.
Achilles probably on the bastard scale, but we don't know enough about him. And we don't know enough about Oshatan. He seems all right, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, was Astarte a bastard for getting rid of all the Space Marines?
But I mean, she had her reasons.
Yeah.
She was like, without the Primarchs, they're really unstable. And look at the Thunder Warriors.
Yeah. The Emperor at this point.
The Emperor at this point in time.
I mean,
how much of a bastard? Because he's not become the Emperor
no,
yet.
but
he's like
But he's prescient. He has psi ability. He's going to know that this is all going to kick off.
Yeah.
And he's decided to be absent for it.
Yeah, that's true.
I think probably he's a level 3 bastard.
Level 3 bastard at this point.
At this point.
We will see if the Emperor through this book series becomes more or less of a bastard.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there we are. That's the bastard scale. We have done Valdor, Birth of the Imperium.
Yay. I think I'll try and get an interview with Chris and see if he'll talk to me about it. But
yeah.
But the hit rate's not so good on some authors, so we'll see.
Yeah. Well,
he might decide to hate me.
Yeah, like Ben Counter does.
Counter
Like Ben
does.
Counter definitely does.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, brilliant. Well, there we are. One more book club done. Thank you for tuning in.
Yes. And if you'd like to ask questions,
then
you can do that. You can do that through our Patreons. We both have Patreons. Definitely pop over to my YouTube channel and say hello. Leave loads of comments and like the video. The more you like, the nicer the algorithms are to us. I'm learning.
Watch Butch Club by
Butch Club.
Butch Club.
I'm not part of that.
I'm not watching Butch Club. I'm not part of that, to be fair.
Where is Butch Club?
Butch Club.
The first rule of Butch Club. No one knows where or what it is.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for watching, everybody.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.